Stitch's Great Escape is often looked at as one of the worst attractions Disney has ever built, having quite the troubled history and a rather disturbing end. This ride was a patch job due to the failure of its predecessor Alien Encounter, which horrified not just children but adults as well. But before we get into all that good stuff, we need to go back to when Disney World first opened. It all started in December of 1971, just 2 months after the grand opening of Walt Disney World. Flight to the Moon opened in Tomorrowland, simulating a rocket launch via screens that acted as windows to the outside of the rocket. The showroom was circular and guests sat around the center of the room with a screen in the middle. The story of the attraction, of course, was a flight to the moon guided by an animatronic named Mr. Tom Morrow, which, fun fact, is referenced on the People Mover to this day.
Paging Mr. Morrow. Mr. Tom Morrow, please contact Mr. Johnson in the control tower to confirm your flight to the moon. Thank you.
The attraction simulated a rocket launch and taught the audience about gravity and space exploration and was far more educational than what would come later in this very show building. The attraction was later updated to become Mission to Mars as Mars felt more futuristic and better fit Tomorrowland. The only real difference was the video that the screens played was of course to Mars and not the moon. The circular nature of the showroom is important to note as this would become a key feature of Alien Encounter and Stitch's Great Escape. Both Flight to the Moon and Mission to Mars were products of their time and rapidly became outdated as technology progressed. Mission to Mars' ridership began to dwindle as much bigger and better attractions would come around, making the attraction obsolete. Mission to Mars ran until 1992 when the CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, wanted to target a much older audience with its replacement attraction. Earlier ideas for the attraction included the Xenomorph from Ridley Scott's Alien, but it was eventually dropped due to obvious reasons. I mean, could you imagine Alien at a Disney park? Oh wait. Instead, they came up with Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, an attraction where a company called XS Tech was giving a demonstration on teleportation. To understand Stitch's Great Escape, I will be highlighting some key elements of Alien Encounter, but if you want a full breakdown on the ride experience, I have a separate video only on Alien Encounter, which I will link in the description. The pre-show features an animatronic named Sir who gives a demonstration on teleportation. He teleports a cute little alien named Skippy from one chamber to another. This of course goes way wrong and it ends up burning Skippy alive. And if you thought that was dark for a Disney ride, that was actually the point. The Imagineers wanted the pre-show to be dark and disturbing to hopefully give parents one last chance to pull their kids out of line. If parents decided to keep going, they'd be met with a circular theater, and unlike Mission to Mars, these seats had harnesses. These harnesses were meant to immerse you in the attraction with binaural audio and vibrations. The center of the room had a large teleportation chamber, and when the attraction started, an absolutely disgusting looking alien was teleported into the chamber. Eventually, the alien would break free and the power would go out along with the lights, and he'd begin terrorizing the audience by flying around the room simulated by audio and get on top of guests simulated by vibrations. Water was also sprayed on the audience to simulate its saliva and eventually the blood of an XS Tech employee attempting to reboot the power. The show ended with XS Tech getting him back into the chamber where the teleportation sequence fails and the alien is vaporized, spraying its guts all over the audience. As you can tell, the attraction was not very family friendly and signs were put up to inform parents of the intense nature of the show. However, this didn't stop parents from ignoring the warning and bringing their children on it anyway, leading to many kids coming off the ride crying and screaming. As if this wasn't reason enough for Disney to start looking at other options, the chairman of XS Tech was played by Jeffrey Jones, who was convicted of some pretty disturbing crimes, but you can do your own research on that if you want to. It's speculated that Disney wanted to distance themselves from him, and rightfully so. They knew they needed to do something, and it just so happens that a Disney film starring an alien just blew up at the box office. Only 2 years after the release of Lilo and Stitch, Stitch's Great Escape would debut at the Magic Kingdom, opening on November 6, 2004 despite the initial summer opening date announcement. The ride was a prequel to Lilo and Stitch, meaning Stitch was not a good guy, which confused many guests. And as if Disney's blunders couldn't get any worse, guests would immediately notice that the Disney castle had been vandalized by Stitch, making the once picturesque Cinderella castle a complete eyesore. I sincerely feel bad for the people there that day hoping to get a family photo in front of the castle. The castle had graffiti all over it and it was toilet papered. This is truly Disney magic. I don't know who approved this, but this is baffling. However, I will say it does have a bit of charm because there's no chance Disney would do something like this nowadays. Guests would of course make their way to Tomorrowland to experience the brand new Stitch's Great Escape. Upon entering the queue, fans of Alien Encounter would immediately notice it's basically the same ride but a PG family-friendly version of it. The story of the attraction is that you are a recruit at the Galactic Federation Prisoner Teleport Center, where aliens are teleported and have different levels depending on the severity of their crimes. The robot sergeant named Sergeant C4703BK27049020 explains that there are 3 different levels of prisoners, 1 being the least severe and 3 being the most. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that the animatronics on this ride, especially Stitch, are very impressive. The sergeant then informs you that they are teleporting a level 1 alien, and this is none other than Skippy from Alien Encounter. I guess this is a prequel to Alien Encounter, or somehow he survived being burnt alive, but after Skippy was burnt alive, I guess he resorted to a life of crime because he was caught jaywalking. As for the burnt Skippy animatronic, they used the animatronic as a completely different character known as the Donut Guy, who was caught sucking the jelly out of all the donuts in the cafeteria. All of that burning on Skippy's skin is now jelly. Quite an interesting way to repurpose the same animatronic, but this is a perfect example of how much was reused from Alien Encounter. All of a sudden, the robot sergeant, I'm not saying his full name again, gets word that a level 3 prisoner was caught and is being teleported to the high security chamber. Guests make their way to the high security chamber, and once again it looks very similar to Alien Encounter, minus the turrets that track Stitch's DNA. The turrets have impressively fluid movement and are honestly quite mesmerizing. Once every guest is secure in their harness, Experiment 626, aka Stitch himself, is teleported into the middle of the room, much like the alien from Alien Encounter. Captain Gantu, who in the film is tasked with capturing Stitch, is not at all intimidated, thinking they teleported the wrong alien. He then asks the audience to watch over Stitch while he attempts to sort out getting the real alien teleported in. Stitch immediately realizes that the turrets track his DNA, so he spits on the audience, causing the turrets to begin firing at the guests. This eventually leads to the systems failing and Stitch making his great escape. This is really when the horror begins. Even though Stitch isn't as threatening as a killer alien, the lights going out and a creature being loose in the room is still terrifying, and this part scared me as a kid as well. He begins jumping on the audience, which is simulated by the shoulder harnesses vibrating. He also tickles guests' heads, simulated by air bursts. This is complete with binaural audio, much like Alien Encounter, so you know where Stitch is at in the room when the lights are off. Then of course, we can't forget what led this ride to infamy. Stitch steals someone else's chili dog and then decides to burp straight in your face, and smells are pumped into the room to simulate a disgusting chili dog burp.
Hey! Give me back my chili dog! My chili dog! Mine! Give me back my chili dog! Oh, mine! Need more onions.
This also led to the room constantly having a faint chili dog smell at all times, so if you went on this attraction, I hope you didn't have a weak stomach. The Galactic Federation gets the power back on and the turrets begin firing behind and above the audience to get Stitch. Eventually, Stitch ends up back in the teleportation chamber and teleports to Florida, getting loose at the Walt Disney World Resort. I always thought this part was really cool and meta. The video displayed shows Stitch going to Cinderella's castle and tricking her into thinking he's her prince. What's really cool is that if you ride this ride at night, there's a nighttime version where this happens when it's dark outside. However, this wasn't always the case, as originally when the ride first opened, Stitch was seen on the Astro Orbiter. Along with the Cinderella Castle update, more dialogue was added to help guests better understand what was happening during the dark segments of the ride. This is where the ride would come to a close and guests' harnesses would lift up, allowing them to exit the ride. Interestingly enough, despite the much more PG tone, many parents still thought the ride was too scary for their children, and many kids would come off the attraction traumatized. Just listen to how the room sounds when the lights go out. Even the comments for the POV of this attraction are talking about how scary it was. This commenter said, "Bro, this ride was terrifying for me. When I was like 3, we had to leave the ride because I just kept screaming and crying. Now thinking back, I would have loved this ride when I got older." Another one said, "This ride spooked me as a kid, but now that it's gone, I miss it, not gonna lie." Initial reviews for the ride called it the worst attraction Disney has ever made. Absolutely nothing about this show was positive. Even if I hadn't hated Lilo and Stitch and hadn't loved Alien Encounter, which I did, this still would have been abysmal. The animatronics looked okay, but not nearly as much so as I had heard. You can see better in most modern attractions. Trust me, don't waste your time on this heaping pile of cow dung. Harsh. It didn't help that this was a prequel to Lilo and Stitch, meaning many kids who had loved the movie, expecting to see their favorite lovable alien, actually ended up spitting and burping in their face. The saving grace of this ride was of course the Stitch animatronic, which looks incredible, and it's a shame it was just left to rot. Over the years, the attraction would lose ridership and would slowly just begin to rot, as Disney had no reason to keep up with it due to its poor reception. The people who loved Alien Encounter hated this ride because it wasn't half as scary and catered more to children, and parents with their children hated it because it was too scary and wasn't kid-friendly enough. You wouldn't believe the number of people I've talked to who've said, "Oh yeah, I went to Disney as a kid, but I don't really remember it. However, I remember the Stitch ride because it traumatized me." In October of 2016, Disney announced that Stitch's Great Escape would only operate seasonally during the more busy times of the year. January 6, 2018 would be the final time Stitch's Great Escape would be open to the public, closing for good without an official announcement from Disney until 2 years later in 2020. Pictures began to surface of the dismantled state of Stitch's Great Escape, including horrifying pictures of the Stitch animatronic and Skippy as well. The showroom also had pictures taken, and from what we can tell, the building is now used for storage and is a backstage area for cast members. No matter how you felt about this attraction, you have to admit it's sad and rather disturbing to see the attraction in this state. I mean seriously, this is nightmare fuel. The ride was scary to children, but this is enough to scare a grown man. What's even worse is that these were discovered in 2018 before Disney announced the closure. So while I don't condone urban exploration, you will get banned for this. Imagine being the explorer going in there for the first time and being met with this. Someone should write a horror story about that. This isn't a story, but I did find an analog horror video on it, so go check that out if you don't feel like sleeping tonight. There was also a photo of the Sir animatronic from Alien Encounter, which I'd actually never seen before, and this one is far less disturbing than Stitch and Buzzy. And unfortunately, we have no images on the actual alien himself, and he's probably just sitting in storage somewhere. This image here is about the closest I can find to a full look at the animatronic in all its terrifying glory. So now that I've scarred you all for life, that's gonna bring this video to a close. I apologize for the wait time because this video took forever to make, but as Disney fans, we are used to long wait times. I just want to thank you all so much for liking and subscribing. It means a lot, and I hope to keep making videos for as long as you guys will watch them. Anyway, subscribe if you like what you saw, and I will see you guys in the next video.